again, as you just mentioned appropriately, $50 silver in 1980 and then $50 silver in 2011, and have silver be right now less than half that price, it just still blows me away. But as bad as silver has been, it will be that good.
Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics on a special episode of the show. I say that because I have my dear friend, Silver Bill Murphy of the Le Metropole. I guess you wouldn't say the Le Metropole Cafe, just Le Metropole Cafe, which high school French coming back to me, and Metropole Cafe and Gata, and only downside is that I got to see Bill earlier this week. I was hoping to do this in person. Spirits had a little different plans for my schedule, but Bill, it sure was wonderful to see you this week, and nice to get you on the show. And how's everything going with you today?
Good, having a great day, Chris. It was great seeing you, and thanks for taking the time to stop by. I had much fun, and we'll do it again sometime.
Yeah, well, we got some great pictures. We got a great workout in. We met some people from the Hunt Brothers family. So, I mean, what else could you ask for? Actually, I know what else we could ask for. We could ask for the silver price to rise. And believe it or not, we're recording on a Friday afternoon. And Bill, I don't know if my internet connection is broken here, but it looks like silver is actually up 34 cents right now. After taking a thorough drubbing, you can see that chart wasn't too pretty over the last couple of days, but I'd love to get your thoughts on where we stand at silver. We don't have to dig into politics today, although if you have any thoughts, like is the election actually going to impact the silver markets? A lot of banks out talking about $50 silver now. Bank of America, I believe it was, saying if Biden gets elected, all of his green stimulus going to juice silver up. So where do you see the market, and will the election, does that matter to the silver price?
Well, it's a lot to get into, Chris, but I've been looking for silver to make its way towards 100 for years, and that just has not been the case. The gold cartel, as I call it, with J.P. Morgan, a big factor of it, has just kept silver under total control. And I think, finally we're on our way. About a year and a half ago, the end of May of last year, they began to lose control of the gold market because they just don't have enough physical supply to do what they've done. And then 3.5 months ago, silver finally, after doing nothing, being the worst market I could ever imagine, gold silver ratio 125. I mean, it's like, what the heck? It finally explodes from 18 to 30. And it's on its way. No, it fell back to 26 for a while and then broke down from there. And then we had another big breakdown lately below 24. And that said, I do think that the gold cartel, again, as I call it, is now in the process of losing control of silver. They can still attack like they do, and they use different algorithms, which I can get into, to get the job done. But silver is finally on its way to 100. It's taking another break. And I think we're going to diddle around here until you mention the elections, after the elections. At some point, it's just going to explode again, just like it did above 21. It went straight to 30. And I think the next move in silver, because I'm pretty sure the bad guys have a big problem with physical silver supply, silver's just going to explode again out of nowhere. And that's pretty much what happened when it took out 21 from 18 to 30. I mean, it went straight up.
Yep.
So I expect to see that kind of move again, and we just got to get through this pre-election stuff and get through all the nonsense that they're giving us with these algorithm trades and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, a lot of great things you mentioned there, Bill, especially the phrase $100 silver, which I know at some points in time seem to some people far-fetched when you actually look at the dynamics, especially I still appreciate what you laid out in the book I did, The Big Silver Short, where you touched on all of those things and the reason why. So I find, especially also the way our culture approaches things psychologically, once a phrase gets out there linguistically, you're hearing more people talk about it. And while I know we're just the nut-wing conspiracy theorists, I would point out, give me a second, I'm going to pull up some of the mainstream banks I'm sure you've seen this, Bill, but here we see Bank of America talking about $3,000 gold. Goldman Sachs, $2,300 gold. They also were advocating to buy silver, not because of the Fed money printing, but because of increased solar demand. Maybe it can be both, but I mean, here's Bank of America talking about $50 silver, Citigroup talking about $40 silver. And I know perhaps long question here, but one of the reasons I would like to point out of why your opinion in particular, I think is quite relevant, or I pay attention to it because Bill, for years, and I've mentioned this on the show, I mentioned it at Silverfest, but I'm going to mention it again. You talked about how watch out when silver crosses 21, and sure enough, here's the chart back to 2016. Got up to 20, came back down, floated around under 20 for 4 years, and then much like you forecast here, finally gets above 20, shot up within weeks to that high. So, it makes sense, and to what you're saying.
Well, it's nice to be right once in a while after struggling with silver for so long, but I really think this is just the beginning. And the key, if I can, emphasize it, is that the gold cartels, I call it, they're running out of enough physical silver to continue the way they did for so many years. And it was really torturous to see, silver trade so poorly with other markets all taking off. You've had the, cryptocurrencies and the NASDAQ and the tech stocks. And a lot of us have had a tough time with some of the silver shares and that kind of stuff, and silver. But I think that game has changed. We've already seen it with good moves in gold and silver. And I think the surprise is going to be, once again, how high gold and silver go. And then I'm talking about next year now.
Yeah, and I mean, especially, we've already seen gold at new all-time highs. So, I mean, I know some people are like, oh, well, they're always saying this, gold and silver. I mean, gold, it's already happened. And Bill, especially, it's nice. It's great. I mean, a million reasons why it's great having you on here. But as someone who remembers the Hunt brothers and what happened back then, when we saw gold at $850, silver at $50. If I had told you that gold was only going to be $2,000 40 years later, I bet you would have taken the over on that. But leaving that aside, with gold, 1900, 2000, whatever you call it, what would you have guessed silver would be at with $2,000 gold?
Jeepers. I mean, again, as you just mentioned appropriately, $50 silver in 1980 and then $50 silver in 2011, and have silver be right now less than half that price, it just still blows me away. That's how cheap it is relative to all other assets and investments people can make. And I'm a big fan of Newton's law of equal and opposite reactions. That as bad as silver has been, it will be that good. And we've seen that. We saw that in August. But right now, I mean, good grief. I mean, I would think you'd have silver at 60 or 70. Not to be overly dramatic, but I mean, what the heck? It's $10, $20 higher than it got to 40 years ago. What other assets are like that? Even though that was a spike, yes, but still, that's where it went.
Well, actually, Bill, believe it or not, I can think of one other asset like that, which actually I meant to read this earlier. Real quick note, tonight's video is sponsored by Dolly Varden Silver, which is run by my good friend Sean Kunkin, who was on the show a couple of weeks ago. And some of these silver projects, it's interesting to think, and I'd love to get your opinion. You can, I don't know if you have an opinion on Dolly, but what do you think is going to happen to some of these shares of some of these silver companies? I mean, it's interesting because we saw silver go from 18 to 29, and today, even with silver around $24, some of the silver stocks are even lower than when silver was $18. Is that another coiled spring piled on top of the silver bullion coiled spring?
I sure hope so. I know one of the most visible stocks out there and one of the best CEOs going in the silver industry is Keith Neumeyer. And his First Majestic stock has just been terrible. And it was, when silver was $5, $6 cheaper, it was $5 higher than it is now. And I know that our hero Eric Sprott put a lot of money into it, and they've got great management, and they're really good people. And I think that is a coiled spring. I'm not sure why it's lagged, but a lot of them are like that. It's not just First Majestic. So, and I think part of the problem, if I may, with some of the shares like that is that with what the cryptocurrencies have done, the NASDAQ stocks, the tech stocks, there's just the interest in our sector right now, and especially for some of the smaller companies like Dolly that you're mentioning, is just that, it's just there isn't the interest. I mean, you have that low volume on the COMEX, and the open interest changes don't do much. The commitment of traders reports, which has to do with the technical setup of the market, is, nothing seems to happen. And that's the way it's been for the past couple of months. And I think that once we get this move, all of a sudden, you're going to have all kinds of investors flow into these cheap shares, because that's what they are, cheap, and they're tremendous values. And that excitement is still to come.
Yeah, I sure think so. And I think on one hand, there's some degree to which people are wondering if this is going to be a repeat of 2016 and kind of hesitant to jump in. Although at the same time, again, it's like, actually, one thing I've been wanting to ask you about that, I'll phrase this to be clear. I don't have evidence of this. It's just something I wonder. But I mean, we have seen that these banks, JP Morgan's paid a fine. I know some people say, well, they were spoofing, not suppressing or manipulating. Still, they did pay $920 million for illegal activity. Actually, it's funny, right as we're talking about it, your buddy Chris Powell sends out, despite JP Morgan's 5 felonies, the Fed entrusts the bank with $2 trillion in bonds. I just wonder, I mean, if these guys are caught manipulating gold and silver as the commodity, to me at least, and I'm not saying it's just my opinion, but if I had to make an even money bet, is it more likely than not that they are somehow distorting the shares? What do you think about that, Bill?
Well, it's a good point. The idea behind what got us started was that they're suppressing the gold and they have to suppress the silver prices because for various reasons that have to do with the dollar and interest rates and public perception. I mean, Paul Volcker said, if gold goes up, it's bad. If it goes down, it's good. And that's the way they've been operating for years. And then you have the Justice Department last year called JP Morgan a criminal enterprise. So they get fined $1 billion for Mickey Mouse spoofing when the real issue is what's really being done to the overall prices all the time. And they just go on and get fined $920 million and go make $3 billion. And nothing changes, nothing. No matter what happens, nothing changes. It's like the CFTC does nothing. It's like this in the Wild West where there's no sheriff. They don't exist. So I think the only way this blows up is what I've been talking about, if I may, that the bad guys, as I call them, are running out of enough physical in London and New York and elsewhere in the world to carry on the way they are. And demand's it's already begun to overpower them. And now it's just, getting to first base. We got 2 or 3 more bases to get to.
Yeah, and Bill, you mentioned something about running out of physical. To me, it seemed like that was how this ultimately ends. Back in 2011, when I was a young buck option trader and hammering on GLD and SLV options, if you told me back then it would still we'd have $25 silver 9 years later, especially given what the Fed's done, I'm not sure I would have believed that. But is there any other possible way when you have this much leverage that it works out, or is it still heading to that point, in your opinion, where it's someday someone says, hey, I want my physical silver, and there's not there?
Exactly, that's what's coming. It's a gradual process, because we have to remember, well, I called the gold cartel blowing up, which is true. It has been in a while, in gold especially. These are rich and powerful people and entities, and they can go all over and do all sorts of things to try to keep the price at bay. But they're in big, big trouble, and that's what's going to happen. One day it's just going to be gone. I know. If I've had this from personal experience when I was involved in the copper market back in '87. It didn't go for the longest time. Nothing like silver, of course. It just wasn't going. We couldn't understand it. And then all of a sudden, one day, and around the 1st of May, I think it was, there were no deliveries for the copper market. Gone. And we said, here we go. And it just soared the rest of the year. So that's what I think is going to happen to silver.
Yeah, well, I would certainly believe that. And Bill, one of the things I know you track regularly, fortunately for people in your column, is the open interest. I'm looking, I know I have a chart of that somewhere here, but could you explain what you look for in the open interest, what that means, what's been happening, and anything we can extrapolate from that?
Well, simply put, an open interest is the longs and shorts on the COMEX in a given commodity. And over the past years, as the prices were suppressed, the gold and silver open interests were sky high. Give you some examples. I mean, silver went up to 245,000 contracts. Right now, it's about 155,000 contracts. The number of longs and shorts hasn't done much lately. But when silver went to $50 in 2011, it was 135,000 contracts. That's all it was, all the way up. Didn't go up. The bad guys let it go. JP Morgan, in my opinion, was buying some physical silver on the way up. They just let it go to the last month when it went from 40 up to 50, and they started selling. The open interest went up. And then, it went up gradually over the years, and it's been very high recently till this year, till the past many months when it's come back down. But basically, they use the open interest, the shorts do, or the cartel does, as I would call it, to sell the paper market to affect the price. And that affects the physical markets and what people do and hedgers and all that sort of thing. So it's my opinion that, and markets can change, but in my opinion, at some point in here, the shorts they're going to blow up. I mean, in silver, they made fortunes for those 10 years, but the ones that stuck in there in August, when it went up from 18 to 29 and back months made 30, they got slaughtered. I mean, it was a short-term loss because they've been coming back, but they're going to have to get out at some point. But they keep playing the same game.
Well, can they get out? I guess that's what is encouraging. Where I mean, I don't know who you buy it back from, unless some bank gets more short, and then that leaves them on the hook. But
they all can do their own thing. Where Gada's position is that it's not just the banks that are the gold cartel and the shorts. It's the U.S. government behind it giving it instructions. It's the reason there's no sheriff. It's the government. And so, yes, you'll have bureaucrats will see something is wrong and they'll make a big stink about it so as not to ruin the whole game. They'll fine at JP Morgan all that money and they keep on doing what they're doing. And the bureaucrats get their way, but who don't realize what's really happening, but they've got all this evidence, so they have to do something with it. And then the game just goes on. But at some point, when now we're in a phase of them running out. When they run out or it gets that dire, they'll just have to cover their positions. And then we're not there yet, or the price will be flying.
Yeah, and it'll be fun to look forward to that. By the way, I know you mentioned the JP Morgan fine, and I assume that money is going to go to reimburse all the investors who, such as the JP Morgan clients that the bank confessed to cheating with spoofing. And I'm sure we're going to get our checks and the reimbursement, and it's not going to go to the Treasury to play war games or fun, nefarious stuff, right?
Yeah, all I know is, for me, spoofing is like I don't know, it's like Mickey Mouse compared to what's really going on. It's like, that's no good, and they get fined $920 million for a reason, it's one of the tricks they use to affect the market. But the big picture is the overall suppression that's going on, not just the spoofing. I mean, I just laugh.
I hear you. And Bill, before we wrap up, again, it's always a pleasure to have you on here, and you've seen so much silver history. You were there for the Hunt brothers. You saw what happened with Warren Buffett. And I think often I look for other scenarios that might be similar comps to think about how this might play out. I've heard people talk about the potato default. Actually, in one of the Market Wizards books, interesting situation in the plywood market back when there were the price controls, because they put a cap on the price. The market was bidding it over that price. Eventually, they let go of the controls. Any thing come to mind in terms of a similar comp that people could take a look at, or that I could study, that is how you think this might ultimately play out? Or maybe it's even the London gold pool, which I think is quite similar, but anything come to mind, Bill?
Well, yeah, we have a spectacular fellow we do, a guy named James McShirley, who's a lumber company executive. And he's a really brilliant guy. And he's been pointing out, for example, that the silver open interest is off the charts, meaning lack of leverage, lack of margins, very high. People have to put up, 2 or 3 times as much money to trade silver as they do in other markets. And that's because they're petrified of losing control of the silver market, which we've just been talking about. And that's a perfect example. Why would the silver open interest be so high? And it keeps going higher. So they are scared of it. They're petrified of it. They know they're going to have a big problem if and when it blows up. And I think now we just have a ticking time bomb. And these past, few weeks and a couple of months been very frustrating. But I'm pretty sure I know where we're headed, and patience will pay off here.
Yeah. Well, this has been a good life experience, lesson in patience, if nothing else. Although Bill, you've been a great role model and a leader. And perhaps just before we wrap up, I'm pulling up your sites here. And if you could just let folks know about what you do at Le Metropole Cafe and GATA, we'll have the links to both of those are in the description field right below there. So folks, go and click on those now. And Bill, can you tell people about what you cover each day there?
Well, just go over all the markets, and James McShirley helps out a lot with his commentary about gold and silver. Then put in information about the world markets, U.S. economic markets, other input from people that follow what we do, and then some commentary from other people. I've been doing that since 1998, and that's how we got involved with GATA, which is my great colleague Chris Powell, who does a fabulous job putting on information. So people can go to www.gata.org if they want to get on his list, and it's lemetropolecafe.com, lemetropolecafe.com if you want to take out a 2-week trial for what I do. And been at it a long time, and it's going to be, those past years were not the most fun. So I'm really looking forward to the next, couple of years, and some real excitement. And I think, mega money is going to be made.
Yeah, I think it will be exciting. Almost as exciting as how this handsome Cornell grad in 1969, the same year my Jets were winning their one and only Super Bowl, Bill was starting wide receiver for the Boston Patriots. Bill, was fun. We got to talk about my plans to buy the Jets one day. It's not going so well now. We may need to suit you back up. So go hit those weights hard. I'll be coming back to visit you in Dallas soon. And again, it was a real treat for me to get to see you there. And, and I appreciate having you on the show again today.
Well, thanks again, and have some fun with David tonight.
Well, I sure will. And again, folks, the links for GATA in the description field below. And I'd also like to mention our sponsor for tonight's video again, Dolly Varden Silver. And to find out more about what they're doing, don't need to go anywhere because there's a video coming your way now.